If you're an HR professional who works hard to fill roles within your company, keep employees engaged, and build company culture, welcome to America Back to Work, where dreams only work if we do. We'll share wide-ranging issues surrounding pre-employment background screening, HR topics such as recruiting, hiring, labor trends, and company culture, as well as broader HR-influenced business topics such as customer experience, service level excellence, and protecting what matters through best practices in prevention, protection, and corporate security. America Back to Work is brought to you by S2 Verify. Here's your host, Arnette Heintze.
Welcome to America Back to Work, brought to you by S2 Verify, where our purpose is to help you hire with confidence and manage insider risk. I'm your host, Arnette Heintze. Thank you for joining. Today, our guest is Jill Hauwiller. Jill is the owner, principal consultant, and executive coach behind Leadership Refinery, where she serves high-potential leaders and high-performing teams, helping them accelerate development with the goal of improving effectiveness and delivering exceptional results. Jill, it's a pleasure to get some time with you today. But first, tell us what you love about working on leadership with teams and how that has propelled you through your career.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I really just believe so much in the potential of the human person, right? And so I'm always interested in helping people be their best version of themselves, especially at work. I'm very fascinated by careers and how people navigate them and how people show up and lead. So any chance I get to work with someone on their leadership philosophy or what they're trying to accomplish and how to do that in the best way possible just is really incredibly fulfilling for me. So I often have to tell people that, I feel my best success is when someone else achieves their goal, and I've had a hand in helping them get there. That's just incredibly fulfilling for me.
Oh, that's fabulous. So before we talk about the micro environment of HR teams, I'd love to talk to you about the HR profession at the macro level. You know, you've run Leadership Refinery now for over 15 years, so you've seen a lot in that time. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the last 15 years with working with various HR leaderships and teams?
Yeah. I started my career early on in an HR role and navigated many types of experiences and roles within that function. And now as more of a consultant to the HR world, I've seen a lot of changes in 25 years. I think back to, originally when it had sort of the label of personnel, and HR was a paper pushing, filing rule carrying entity inside of an organization, either to hire people or to keep the company out of trouble in some type of way. And what I have seen is just this incredible evolution, which I think a lot of people in the HR profession believe in and have always believed in. And there have been some things that have happened in the world that have helped kind of HR earn more of its place. So, we've made this transition from years ago of being personnel to really being, I love when I see new titles like people operations, like business partners. Those things to me show that evolution, that HR is really a core element to a highly functioning leadership team and a high functioning organization.
Yeah. So if you look out in the spectrum of what HR is involved with, and, if you're trying to identify some of the biggest spots out there, some blind spots where risk might be created, what might those areas be?
Yeah, for me, I had the good fortune of working in a business school with a lot of HR graduate students. And for me, what I've noticed, the biggest thing or the biggest blind spot that HR professionals can try to shore up is business acumen, really, truly understanding the business, getting involved in the financials, earning the trust and getting into the minds of the business leaders is going to make the biggest difference, honestly, for HR professionals. Because once you can speak the language of the business and understand the profit and loss and everything that goes in and is involved in the financials of the business leaders see the HR function as a critical partner, as a critical piece of a successful organization.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest opportunities now for companies that you see missing when it comes to engaging and retaining staff, and which has got to be like the number one goal of any team, right? You want an engaged staff, and you, more than anything, once you spent that money to select and hire and bring the right team members on, how do you retain them? What's the key there?
Yeah, it seems like that topic of retention has always been on the radar, but and yet in the recent years, I think it's really come to the forefront as there's been a lot of volatility in the work market and in the economy. But what I would say are some areas to really focus on when it comes to retention. And this is not new information. I'm going to share something that I think a lot of people already know. It's that we need to develop our managers, right? That adage that people, don't leave companies, they leave managers. I think it's 100% true.
Totally true. Totally.
I've lived that in my career, and I watch it happen every day with the teams that I work with. So if we are not paying attention to how we create and equip managers to do that role well, and managing is different than leadership. We probably don't have time to get into that, but I think that there's different skill sets, and there's certainly some overlap between the two. But we have to equip our managers and train and support them and give them an outlet to learn and really invest in that level in the organization if you really want to retain people. It's the biggest sort of lever that an organization can pull.
Yeah, I so totally agree with you about that. People don't leave companies, they leave bad managers, and you see it time and time again. So, at Leadership Refinery, you've seen over the years, you've seen a number of issues that arise, but what are the things that bring clients back to you time and time again? Are there a couple of things that are happening with HR teams that all of a sudden they go, oh, Jill, we need your help, and it keeps coming up? Can you identify some of those?
There are a couple of things that I think people come to me for specifically. One of them is I just, over the many years and some, graduate studies of my own, developed an expertise in emotional intelligence. So I'm often sought out if there is a leader or even a highly technical team member who isn't collaborating as effectively as they could be, who needs to be a little more influential, or honestly needs to be more empathetic. I'm often brought in to work with that individual or those teams so that they can be more productive and more effective. Other reasons people call upon me, they need a more collaborative and effective team. So I do things on high-performing teams. And also, the topic we were just talking about is around retention. A lot of people will engage me to help develop and retain their top talent so that they don't hit the street and go bring all of that knowledge and experience to a competitor or another organization.
Yeah. So I understand that you offer a process of reflection to help clients, achieve their goals and plans. And, so I don't want you to give any secret sauce away here today, but what can you tell us about that process that's a typical approach on? Because I think the idea of reflection is such an interesting concept.
Yes. Well, in my work and my experience, I've noticed that most leaders in particular don't set aside enough time to truly be reflective. They're so busy reacting to the things that are thrown at them that they don't spend the time to really think about what matters, what's most important, what do I value, how is this going to impact me or the team or the organization, because they're just moving, quite honestly, a bit too fast. So I think allowing people, and sometimes that's where the coach comes in, right? That it's creating some space for people to think more deeply, be a little more self-aware, grow in some of that self-awareness, which is huge, and allows them to be a little bit more, a lot more effective in how they're interacting with their teams. So some of the key things that I work on with people is around understanding their purpose. Like, do you know why you're here and what you're here to do? And does that drive the decisions that you make? I also like to work with people on understanding their values. We all have values. We may or may not be able to articulate them. And so doing a little bit of work around purpose and values, I think really helps ground leaders. It helps them make better, clearer decisions. It's a part of that reflection process. So once you've identified them, you can go back and say, okay, am I making this decision that's in line with my values? Are my values in line with my leader's values, with this organization's values? And then we can kind of really identify fit, as well as, being a leader of a highly productive team and organization.
Yeah. So I've got a question now that I think might help some of the HR pros out there? Because we need to remember they are employees as well as anybody in the organization. And a large portion of our audience happens to be HR professionals. So what are some of the signs that an HR pro's personal talents might not be aligned with their career, and it might be time for them to consider making a change? You got any thoughts on that?
Oh, I totally do. And I'm a big proponent of the positive psychology movement and understanding our individual talents and strengths and really aligning that with our work. I do that with a lot of the teams and individuals that I work with. I feel like there's a couple of really good signs to be looking for really any professional, but I think this will speak to the HR pros as well. If your days feel long, if your days feel really long and you don't have enough opportunities, you're like, whoa, where did the day go? Right? Or like, I just got lost in time. You know, one of my favorites is always like, I forgot to eat lunch. I was so into what I was doing, right? If you forget something like that because you were so into, and I mean kind of joyfully immersed in what you were doing, then you're in the right place and you're spending your time and your talents well, right? But if you don't have those feelings and your days feel long and slow and painful and you dread Sundays because the next day is Monday, like those are some signs that we need to be paying attention to. Absolutely. I think there's also other smaller signs, like when we feel like we're not being heard, that our opinions aren't valued, we're feeling underutilized or underappreciated, which I think comes in commonly for those in the HR profession. I think it's time to take a closer look.
Yeah, that's great. So, and kind of continuation of that, what are some steps HR pros can take to discover their why? You know, Simon Sinek is the guy that's kind of, brought attention to the why, for business. But that why can also apply to individuals. And how do they discover their why and leak it to their daily work?
Yeah, definitely. I think it comes back to something I said earlier about reflection and why that's so important. I think spending time, like carving out actual time to think about your purpose. And sometimes for those of us who are in service type professions, like human resources and talent management and all of those other types of roles, it's important to spend some time getting really, really clear on who do I serve and why do I serve and why is it important to me and why is that fulfilling for me in my life and how does that connect to my purpose? Because I think when we are clear on who and what we are in service of, and we can align, I do these tasks and activities because this is in service of creating a healthy culture. This is in service of helping our end user. If I'm in the healthcare industry, it's in service of the end user, the patient, that whoever might receive the medical device or whoever might be a patient, in the health system. If we can connect the daily tasks that we do to that purpose and who we are in service of, I think it goes a long way in connecting that why. And as I talk to people who have a strong connection to their why, those are many of the things that I hear. They're so strongly connected to the mission of the organization or what they are there, who and what they are there to serve.
Yeah. So continuing on with that train of thought, how can HR pros take the reins of their own personal development and stay accountable to themselves? And even if they're not getting great leadership from their own managers, what can they do?
Yeah. I've encountered this so many times in my own career. It seems like the HR team are the ones who get the least investment in their development, right? They're sort of the ones left behind, or they're so busy taking care of everyone else that they don't get a chance to take care of themselves. There are a few things that I would recommend. And I guess the first one is foundationally to constantly learn. Consider yourself a learner, have a learning mindset, be someone who believes in the evolution of the mind and of the industry and of the function. And that might mean reading a lot. That might mean taking a class. That might mean joining a professional association. It might mean networking, not just with other HR professionals, but other industry professionals, right? If I'm in the oil and gas industry as an HR professional, I can network with other HR professionals, and there's value in that, absolutely. But maybe I need to be networking with other people and being involved in professional associations that are in the oil and gas industry, because that will help me sharpen that business acumen that I mentioned earlier. And I will be more valuable to the leaders that I am there to serve. So I think just that learning mindset and constantly making time and space for that personal growth is huge.
Yeah, I love that advice for HR professionals, but let's take it a step further. So what does great HR management look like? So now we're going to go to their bosses and go, how should they be engaging with their teams, and how can they help their team members discover their own passion and accelerate their professional development?
Yeah. I think it's about providing tools and resources that allow people to take the reins, to sort of be in the driver's seat of their career and their learning. So if you've got an HR professional on your team who's really curious about something that doesn't seem to be an HR fit, nurture that. See where it goes. Give them some time and space to go explore that. Provide them some resources if you have them to take some time to do that. Attend a conference, go learn from an expert, shadow somebody, get them a mentor who maybe is in a completely different function in the organization, but they have a curiosity around that. Like, those are the things that I wish leaders would be paying more attention to and nurturing that. Understand where those curiosities are, because we're all multifaceted people. We all have multiple interests, right? Like, nurture the things that maybe aren't the obvious. That person will feel so seen and heard. They'll feel supported in their career. It's a great retention strategy, and it doesn't even have to cost a dime to develop people in their roles and help them explore beyond what they're already doing.
Oh, that's fabulous. Well, Jill, thank you so much for all of that insight. But, before we sign off, I want to ask you a question. And it's a question I ask all of our guests. And that is, if S2 Verify were to conduct a background check on you today, would there be any surprises?
Surprises wouldn't surprise me. I don't think it would surprise anyone else.
I'll let you determine that.
I don't think I would see any surprises. I'm a Midwestern farm girl growing up, and I've always been very orderly, like to follow the rules. So there wouldn't be much dirt that came up. I do remember getting a speeding ticket in my 20s, but I think that might have already fallen off the record. I don't even know how long.
I bet it has.
So I just disclosed something that you wouldn't even find. But
exactly.
No, it's kind of squeaky clean over here.
Well, that's good. Well, Jill, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And it's a very insightful conversation. Where can our audience connect with you and Leadership Refinery?
Oh, well, thanks for asking. You'll find Leadership Refinery on LinkedIn and Facebook, but probably the best place is our website, www.leadershiprefinery.com.
Well, that's fabulous. So anybody, especially in the HR industry and pros themselves, this is a resource. So please reach out to Jill. So, and now I'd like to have another minute with my partners, Bill and Jim at S2 Verify. The world that we're living in today, at least for the last 6 months, the concept of artificial intelligence is being talked about constantly on the news and any other educational programs. What change in this environment do you think AI will have for our HR partners, in the HR field? Have you had conversations with our clients on this topic? And if not, do you see a trend coming? Bill?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously everybody's concerned about AI. I mean, we've been using some type of AI for the last several years. We don't use it in the adjudication process just simply because it's hard for a computer system to tell, if Steve Smith is the same Steve Smith as, that we're looking for. So it takes somebody with basically a human mindset to go and look out the additional information to verify that is the right and correct Steve Smith. So I think some of our competitors are using AI and machine learning. And what's happening is they're getting sued from those individuals because it's not the same individual. And so, I think there's an application for it in our field. However, I think, until it has the ability to be the same thing as a human, interpretation and go the extra mile and call the court or et cetera, then, it's going to have disparate impact. I mean, the EEOC just came out with a whole article on disparate impact using artificial intelligence. And so I think we as an organization and all the CRAs have to look at that and in the way, the utilization of AI versus, is that going to have a disparate impact on somebody and actually call, somebody a criminal when they're not?
Yeah. Jim, your perspective.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what Billy just talked about. Arnette, I've been reading recently, there's a lot being published on this topic. The FCRA was principally historically driven off of kind of the traditional way records are retrieved and managed, and if you will, how redress works, how we go about it. And kind of to Billy's point, the advent of AI flies completely in the face of much of the compliance framework that's been built. And so we're finding, significant challenges. Billy mentioned a couple. A lot of it has to do with the manner in which the AI is used. If the AI is used simply to extract a record, but that record is, using an S2Verify term, adjudicated or reviewed by a human and done accurately and precisely by the guidelines of the FCRA, we're good. But if we're letting the AI derive the answer off of a formula versus the reality of what does it actually say, then we were absolutely in the face of a compliance challenge. So the biggest issue that I see at the moment is going to be, possibly in the course, but in the face of compliance versus artificial intelligence.
For our audience, please tune in next week when we continue our conversation about the trends, challenges, and solutions in HR, digging into fractional HR employee strategy with Dr. Tiffany Slatter of HR Tailor Made. We'll see you then. And it goes without saying, let's get America back to work, because dreams only work if we do. Jill, thanks so much for joining. Look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you.
If you want to stay abreast of HR, recruiting, and hiring trends, tips, and tools, make sure you subscribe to America Back to Work. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating and a review.